Loretta Ann Frank, missing since 1988 from the Whitehorse/Watson Lake area in Yukon, Canada. Hello everyone. In light of it being Truth and Reconciliation Day, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this poor girl that went missing in Yukon, Canada. Unfortunately, the government at that time really let her down. Her name is Loretta Ann Frank. However, everyone called her Laura. She was born in 1969 and was the youngest of 6 children. She is described to be 5 feet 8 inches, 110 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She grew up in Lower Post, BC. It's an Aboriginal community about 20 kilometers south of the Yukon border. It was home to one of the many residential schools in Canada, and has been open from 1951 to 1975. It faced many lawsuits during its time. It was reported that there were over 38,000 claims of abuse from the students of the school, many of which they got away with back in that time. I wasn't able to find a record that Loretta attended the school, since it was not mandatory to send them once the Indian Act was revised in 1951. However, it was the only school in the area, and families still felt pressured as the closest other school was 5 hours away, so the chances are very high. She was known to be shy and have a rather timid composure. As she entered her teen years, she began developing signs of mental illness and was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. Eventually, in 1987, Loretta moved in with her brother, and his spouse at the time, Patricia McIntosh in Watson Lake, Yukon. It was a small town with about 700 people at that time. It's most well known for its signpost forest, and the Northern Lights and Science Center. The mental health resources in Watson Lake are very limited, however. A psychiatrist would visit once a month, but the therapists at the time were doing a rotation every 6 months. So once the patient finally got used to them, they had someone new. This can be pretty damaging for someone with a serious mental illness, so they agreed that Laura would move into a group home in Whitehorse, Yukon, which is just over 437 kilometers away, almost a 5-hour drive. While she was staying there, she got a job and started seeing a man from Haines, Alaska in the USA. Things really seemed to be improving for Laura, but she was still unhappy and didn't like staying there. When she came over to her brother's for Thanksgiving in 1988, she expressed her dislike and wanted to move back home. However, everyone thought she would be much better off getting help from the group home as she had been. Once their holiday festivities were done, they all said their goodbyes and parted ways to return back to their homes. However, that was the last time they have seen or heard from Laura. Patricia called the police to report Laura missing right away, on November 15, 1988. However, the police assumed she had just run away and never filed her missing person case until 5.5 years later, in 1993. They claimed that the family did not report it until then, as in the initial call they said she may have gone on holiday. I know, ridiculous, right? That long time can have an enormous impact on any clues they may have found that could help find her. There has been speculation that she may have run away with her boyfriend from Alaska. However, his identity has never been released, and the police haven't shared whether they have looked into his whereabouts at the time of Laura's disappearance. Group Home in Whitehorse was also facing scrutiny that year when their employees were allegedly kicking people out who had nowhere to go. Again, I couldn't find whether or not this was the same place that Laura was staying at, but if it was, maybe that's what happened when she got back. They also had a few mines open there: Omni Resource Mine, Tura Resources Mine, the Quetzal River Mine, United Keno Hill Mines, etc. There was a big strike as well, and a lot of people ended up losing their jobs, or even their lives. I couldn't find anything on whether the police searched the mines in hope of finding Laura. But a lot of people diagnosed with schizophrenia tend to wander around slightly disoriented, and could easily get lost, especially if they're not familiar with the area. Also, they have since burned the residential school in Lower Post, BC to the ground. Quite a few people who had attended that school gathered to watch, many of them crying. One of the staff members who dealt quite a bit of abuse to the young Aboriginal boys has since been sentenced to 10 years in jail, which is much less than he deserves, but at least there was some justice. Anywho, I feel really bad for Laura's family. She pretty much got swept under the rug when she needed help the most, and it seems all too familiar in cases with young Indigenous women, especially around this time period. I really do hope they get answers one day. If you have any information on Laura's whereabouts, please contact M Division RCMP at 867-667-5555, referencing case 20,141,625,917, or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477. Something small could make a massive difference.